Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the shadows, literally. You're not just here to fall asleep, you're here to slip into a quieter corner of history where puppets breathe incense, storytellers whisper through their noses, and laughter might actually stop the show. This isn't Broadway. This is a haunted, half-forgotten stage tucked behind centuries of silk curtains and sandalwood smoke. Welcome to the world of ancient Thai puppet theater, where the rules are weirder than you'd expect and somehow, still, sacred. And trust me, if you tried breaking even one of these rules back then, you probably wouldn't make it to intermission. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Maybe I'll whisper your name into the next curtain call. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into a marketplace wrapped in twilight. The lanterns hanging above are barely flickering, their light caught in folds of mist. You hear a faint click, then another. It's not footsteps. It's wood. There in the corner of a worn-down temple courtyard you see it, a makeshift stage, nothing more than a worn red rug and a line of tattered fabric strung across two bamboo poles. But something moves behind it. You don't see the performer. Only a silhouette, and that silhouette twitches, no rises like it's waking from a deep sleep. The puppet, your first instinct? It's possessed, obviously, because that thing doesn't move like wood should. It tilts its head like it hears you breathing. Then it bows. You're hooked, but no puppeteer in sight. That's rule number one in this world. The puppeteer must never be seen, ever. The illusion must remain untouched. It's not magic if you see the strings, right? So the masters of this ancient art hide behind curtains, inside shadow boxes, even crouched in holes dug beneath the stage. Yeah, underground. Imagine squatting in a sweat-drenched pit just to make a wooden princess flutter her eyelashes. That's dedication. And no, these aren't your average sock puppets. These are intricately carved, jointed works of spiritual craftsmanship. Some took months to finish. Each one represents a being, human, animal, sometimes demon. And once they hit the stage, they weren't just toys, they were alive, or close enough. There's a belief, whispered among older performers, that every puppet inherits a sliver of its maker's soul, which is cute until you realize it means if you drop it, you might be damaging a sacred vessel. No pressure. Back to your midnight show. That first puppet bows again and another joins in, then a third. They dance without touching, they fight without bruising. You lean in, trying to see who's controlling them, but you can't. You shouldn't. That's the rule, because according to old tradition, if a spectator does catch sight of the puppeteer during a performance, the show must immediately stop. The audience has broken the spell. Some groups even believed it would curse the puppets, leaving them lifeless forever. Which sounds dramatic, until you hear what happened in Chiang Mai, 1773. One tourist, okay, maybe drunken rice merchant, is more accurate, accidentally kicked over the stage curtain. The puppet froze mid-battle scene and never moved again. The troupe tried everything to revive it. Oils, incense, new strings, even animal blood. Yeah. Chicken blood. Nothing worked. The puppet was buried at dawn. True story. Probably. Anyway, back to you. The performance continues uninterrupted. You marvel at the grace, the uncanny timing, the fact that the puppet blinks. You swear it blinks. And that's when you notice something stranger. There's no music, only the puppets. They move as if following a song only they can hear. And somehow you feel that rhythm. In your chest. It's hypnotic. You try to remember if you've ever seen something so quiet and yet so loud. Suddenly the puppet looks at you, or maybe over your shoulder. You turn, but there's no one there. And that's when the curtain flutters, just a breeze, and you catch a glimpse, a shadow, no face, just hands, three of them. But we'll get to that next. Because in the world of Thai puppetry, even hands have secrets, and you're just getting started. The curtain stills. You stare into the shadows behind it, but whatever you saw, those three quick-flicking hands are gone. like smoke that knows. It's been spotted. But now your curiosity has teeth, because one puppet was moving with 3 distinct rhythms, not 1, not 2, 3. And here comes your second lesson in this strange, forgotten world. A single puppet is never controlled by a single person. You shuffle a little closer to the edge of the rug, careful not to make a sound. And there, behind the curtain, the dance resumes. Now that you're watching for it, you can tell. The arms move with one kind of fluidity, graceful, sweeping, full of drama. The legs, though, they've got more bounce, a sharper, reactive kind of energy. And the head, it's the slowest of all. Controlled, contemplative, like it's thinking. It's almost like 3 souls in one body. And you wouldn't be far off. In traditional Thai puppet theatre called Hun Lakon Lek, each full-sized puppet is brought to life by 3 puppeteers. Yes, 3 adults. For one puppet. One handles the head and right hand, another takes the left hand, and the third, they control the feet, the hips, the overall posture, the puppet's very mood. It's like watching 3 people share one brain, which, depending on how your group projects went in high school, either sounds magical or like a fight waiting to happen. But here's the catch. No one speaks. Not one word passes between them during a performance. The entire coordination is done through shared breath, muscle memory, and something older than rehearsal. Trust. They train for years to move as one. One twitch from the lead puppeteer, and the others must follow. And if they don't, the puppet looks wrong, broken, like its soul just tripped over its shoelaces. You once watched a co-worker try to carry a large office printer with a buddy, and you're pretty sure they didn't sync half as well as these 3. These guys, they flow. And remember, you're never supposed to see them. They dress in all black, head to toe, even masks sometimes. Not because it's edgy, but because black is the color that disappears under candlelight. They erase themselves so that the puppet, and only the puppet, is real. But let's talk about the symbolism for a moment. Because why else would you be here at 11:42 p.m. listening to puppet philosophy, right? In Thai belief systems influenced by animism and Buddhism, the idea of composite spirit is common. A single identity formed by multiple forces, body, speech, and mind. That's exactly what's happening here. 3 people unite into one essence to bring life to something that is technically dead wood. Yeah, you're watching spiritual possession. But for puppets. And somehow it's calming. Now, as you're watching this trio of unseen hands breathe motion into a silent dancer, something else clicks into place. It's not about one person controlling something. It's about people relinquishing ego, becoming invisible, so that something more meaningful can exist. That's actually kind of deep. Oh, and here's your weird fact of the night. Back in the late 1800s, there was a troupe in Ayutthaya that trained dogs, yes dogs, to recognize mistakes in puppet synchronization. If the movement was off, the dog would bark once, bark twice, and the show stopped. Nobody really knows how the dogs were trained. Some say treats, others say sorcery. Most historians are still arguing whether this was a real thing or just an overcooked folktale. Still, imagine being the guy whose show got shut down by a judgmental Pomeranian. Anyway, the puppet bows again, and its arms rise in perfect unison. Left and right, the legs kick out softly, held aloft as if floating. You see the shadow of a second puppet join it, and now 2 trios of puppeteers must move in sync, not just within their own puppet, but with each other. It's puppet inception, or the world's most graceful game of Twister. And you, dear listener, sitting cross-legged in your imagination, are slowly falling under the spell of rhythm and silence and mystery. The puppets begin to dance together, not just as characters, but as representations of a whole story. The monkey warrior, the forest maiden, the angry storm god. All in motion, all alive, but not too alive, because there's another rule. A whisper, really, and you're about to feel it. If the puppet ever moves too well, if it becomes too human, it must be retired. You lean back slightly. That's another story. The soft echo of the wooden clack still just lingering like an aftertaste. Somewhere beyond the flickering curtain, the puppets are still mid-dance, but your mind has drifted to something stranger. Because you just learned that 3 people control 1 puppet. And yet here's the third rule carved quietly into the spine of this ancient tradition. No one is allowed to laugh too loudly. I know. Sounds like something your middle school librarian once whispered through gritted teeth. But here, it's practically divine law. As the tale goes, if the audience laughs too hard, too suddenly, or heaven forbid with a snort, the performance must pause. Not because the puppeteers are offended, not even because it breaks the mood. No, it's because loud laughter is believed to disrupt the attention of the gods. You shift slightly in your seat, not wanting to offend any cosmic beings, obviously. In the old days, puppet theater wasn't just entertainment. It was sacred storytelling. Each show was a ritual, a reenactment of celestial dramas, moral fables, and ancient epics where gods often walked among mortals. These weren't just bedtime tales, they were cosmic business. And so in temples and village squares, when the puppets were moving and the music swelling, people were allowed to smile, chuckle quietly, maybe exhale one of those nose laughs. That sounds like a polite pigeon. But belly laughs, shrieking giggles? Absolutely not. You might attract the wrong kind of attention. The belief was that if joy became too loud, it invited mischief. Not from demons, mind you, but from the deities themselves. Gods, you see, were easily distracted. And when distracted, they were known to intervene. Not always kindly. That's why many shows had a special hand signal. If someone in the crowd started laughing too enthusiastically, the narrator, hidden somewhere among the shadows, would raise 2 fingers, like a silent shush, and the puppeteers, they'd freeze the show for a few beats. Let the laughter die. Down. Let the gods return their gaze to the heavens. You start to realize something. This theater isn't just about puppets. It's about boundaries, between human and divine, between seen and unseen, between what you feel and what you show. And the laughter rule. That's just one thread in a whole tapestry of unspoken holy etiquette. There's even an old proverb, often whispered among older puppeteers before a performance, a silent smile pleases the gods, a cackling mouth tempts their envy. A bit dramatic, sure, but that's theater. But here's a fun twist you didn't expect tonight. One of the most famous puppet skits from the 17th century was a comedy. A full-blown slapstick routine starring a drunken hermit, a grumpy buffalo, and a chicken that refused to die. It was hilarious, or it would have been, if you could actually laugh. Audiences had to hold it in. The louder the scene got, the quieter the crowd had to become. It was like watching a stand-up show in a library. Imagine that tension. The puppets fall into a puddle. Someone loses their hat. The drunken hermit tries to milk the buffalo from the wrong end. The urge to howl with laughter builds in your chest, like a sneeze during a wedding. And yet, silence. That's the magic, though. That's the test. Ancient Thai puppet theater wasn't just about what was shown. It was about what was held back. Even the puppeteers weren't immune to this. They weren't allowed to laugh during shows either. And if one of them cracked, just a smirk, just a chuckle, the others had permission to whack them lightly with a fan behind the stage, like a spiritual slap on the wrist. Want a weird fact? There's an actual scroll, now stored in a dusty provincial museum that outlines approved emotional responses during performance. It lists slight upward turn of lips, acceptable. Audible, ha, not acceptable. Knee slaps, extremely forbidden. Historians still debate whether it's satire or not. Probably not. That brings us to tonight's historical footnote. In 1841, during a royal birthday performance, a nobleman in the front row broke into roaring laughter at a joke involving a farting elephant puppet. The show froze, musicians stopped. The narrator went silent, a full 60 seconds passed. Then the puppet turned toward the nobleman and slowly bowed. And the nobleman apologized. You've probably never seen anyone apologize to a puppet. But now you're picturing it. And once again, you're reminded. This world isn't normal. It doesn't want to be. Back on the stage tonight, the puppets are reaching the emotional peak of their scene. A silent heartbreak, a betrayal between siblings. No one speaks. The crowd is still. And just as the puppet drops its head in sorrow, Someone behind you lets out a giggle, short, sharp. The curtain flutters. A breeze. Or maybe, just maybe, the gods checking in. Either way, the puppets pause, and in the quiet space that follows, you feel it. The rules are still alive. The silence settles like fog, thick, charged, meaningful. That one giggle, it didn't seem like much. But now the air around the stage feels heavier, as if the puppets, frozen mid-scene, are listening, waiting, deciding whether to forgive the outburst or punish it with stillness. You're holding your breath, even though you weren't the one who laughed. Then slowly the lead puppet bows again. The others follow suit. The show resumes. Crisis averted. But tonight's strange truths aren't finished with you yet. Because just as the story picks up again, a new figure appears. Not a puppet, not a human. Something in between. The Puppeteer monk. No, that's not a stage name. It's a real role. A historical one. A rare kind of performer who didn't just operate puppets, but also blessed them, taught them, protected them. And this brings us to the next odd, absolutely real rule in the book of ancient Thai puppet theatre. Every puppet must swear an oath. That's right, an actual sacred handwritten vow. Before a puppet ever touches a stage, before a string is pulled or a hand is slipped inside the hidden rods, it must undergo a quiet ritual, a cleansing, a spiritual preparation. And as part of that, the puppet is given an oath, usually written on paper or cloth, sometimes bamboo. The words are simple but powerful, promises to serve truth, to respect the stage, to never lie to the audience, to never awaken at the wrong time. Then, here's the part that'll stick with you. It's rolled up and placed inside the puppet's body, usually in the hollow chest or sometimes the head. That's right, your favorite wooden monkey warrior. He's carrying a tiny scroll tucked inside his rib cage. A soul contract. It's not for show. It's not for luck. It's because the puppet is considered alive in spirit, and like any being, it needs purpose. The oath is its compass. In some troupes, it was believed that if a puppet lost its oath scroll, it would start moving wrong. Its timing would go off. Its story would drift. Some even said the puppet might start acting on its own, improvising scenes no one had rehearsed. You shift again, wondering how many rogue performances were blamed on missing scrolls. There's even one legendary tale, probably exaggerated, but juicy nonetheless, of a puppet who refused to die because its scroll had never been burned. It kept reappearing, in storage rooms, under tables, one time tied in a rice sack at a village gate. Puppeteers started calling it the orphan. No troupe wanted to adopt it, no monk could cleanse it. Eventually, someone buried it at a crossroads. With a broken drumstick and 3 jasmine flowers. No one knows what happened after that, and maybe it's better that way. But here's something softer to hold on to. These oaths weren't just superstition. They were a reflection of deep respect for the art, for the stories, for the puppets themselves. Because when you're asking a piece of carved wood to stand in for kings, demons, gods, and grandmothers, you'd better give it some guidance. And maybe, just maybe, a little dignity. Another odd detail. The writing of these vows wasn't standardized. Every troupe had its own phrasing. Some were poetic, some were blunt. One surviving example simply reads, "I move with truth, I sleep with honor. I speak only what the hand allows. I am not the story. I am its shadow." Kind of beautiful, isn't it? You blink, returning to the present. The performance is reaching a quiet interlude. A puppet is kneeling at the edge of the stage, its head bowed. A tiny flick of its hand reaches toward the heavens. It's mourning someone, maybe itself, and you wonder, what's inside that puppet? What promise is hidden there? What secret is it keeping folded in its chest? You look again, half expecting. The fabric on its chest to part, a tiny scroll to float out into the air like a moth in moonlight. It doesn't. Of course not. But the idea lingers. Maybe that's the point. The best stories aren't the ones that tell you everything. They're the ones that make you ask the quiet questions. And in this strange tradition, where puppets take oaths and the audience must whisper their joy, every detail is a ritual, every movement a vow. And you? you're already deep in it. So don't stop now. We haven't even reached the part where stars become spies. The stars are watching you now. No, seriously, you sit under the faint silver light, the puppets mid-scene, and it feels like something's changed. Not the story, not the performance, the sky. It's too clear, too perfect. The kind of night poets write about, and puppeteers avoid like plague. Because here's your next rule in this world of sacred shadows. Puppet shows must never be performed under a sky full of stars. You'd think that's ideal, right? A cool night, no rain, a crowd settled on mats under open sky. But in this tradition, when the heavens are too bright, the stage stays dark. Why? Because stars aren't just pretty dots. In ancient Thai belief, stars are eyes, specifically the eyes of ancestors. And while most cultures love the idea of watching ancestors protecting us from above, the Thai puppet world had a slightly more complicated take. The belief was this: on clear nights, when the stars blink freely overhead, your ancestors are paying attention, closely, sharply, suspiciously, which means any slip, any crooked move, a forgotten line, a puppet whose string gets tangled, becomes an embarrassment not just to the troupe but to the entire lineage. You're not just messing up a scene, you're disappointing ghosts. No pressure. There's even an old saying whispered backstage: a cloudy night hides the shame. On especially starlit evenings, some puppet troupes would intentionally delay performances. They'd wait for a passing cloud bank, or light incense thick enough to blur the sky. Others would hang long fabric canopies, scented with jasmine or lemongrass, to soften the view above. If that wasn't possible, the show was cancelled. Not postponed, cancelled. And it didn't matter if the crowd had travelled for days, or if the king's nephew was sitting front row with a mango in one hand and an impatient scowl in the other. The stars ruled the schedule. Now you might be thinking, come on, stars can't really see. Sure, but imagine spending your life mastering an art form so fragile that a strong wind or misplaced cough could ruin everything, and now add divine surveillance. It's not paranoia, it's quality control. Some historians believe this rule began as a practical joke, a way for tired puppeteers to get a night off, but over generations it evolved into a core part of the ritual. If the stars were too sharp, the show stayed silent. There's a recorded incident, in temple records not tabloids, from 1724, where a show in Nakhon Si Thammarat proceeded despite a forbidden sky. Halfway through the tale, just as the puppet king was declaring war, a gust of wind knocked the stage wall flat, revealing the puppeteers in full. One reportedly screamed. The narrator dropped his nose flute. The audience? Silent. Because above them, the stars were watching. Needless to say, that troupe didn't perform again for 7 years. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. And here's your odd fact of the night. Some puppet masters used to hang mirrors on the inside of their stages, not to check their makeup, but to reflect starlight away. They believed that deflecting the gaze of the sky would keep the performance morally insulated. A phrase I'm sure you've never heard before. You're welcome. Back at your nighttime performance, the sky above has clouded over slightly. You notice it only because the flicker of starlight on silk has faded. The puppets seem bolder now, as if the absence of eyes has granted them permission to move more freely. One leaps mid-air, caught on a rod so fine you barely notice the hand. Guiding it, it spins, pirouette, and lands in a bow. The audience gasps softly. A polite gasp, mind you, nothing that would anger the gods. And just then you catch it. A puppeteer's eyes behind the curtain, only for a second, focused, fierce, utterly still, watching you. Or maybe making sure the stars aren't. It's strange how, in a world built on make-believe, everything feels more real. As if the rules of this theatre aren't just superstition, but shared understanding. An agreement between humans and something bigger. Tonight you're part of that agreement. A witness, a dreamer, a guest among shadows. And the next time you glance at the night sky and think, those stars are beautiful, maybe, just maybe, you'll remember. They might be watching too. The clouds linger above like curtains of their own, shielding the stage from ancestral scrutiny. Good, because tonight's performance is about to take a curious turn, and it starts with the smell. No, not popcorn, incense. Thick, earthy, oddly sweet. It hits you like a memory you've never lived. Sandalwood mixed with something floral and, is that pepper? You glance around, half expecting a street vendor, but it's coming from the stage, from the puppets. And that brings us to tonight's next whispered rule. The scent of incense determines a puppet's personality. Yes, you heard that right. In traditional Thai puppet theatre, before a show begins, long before the first string is pulled or the narrator hums through his nose, each puppet is bathed in fragrance. Not just for ritual cleansing, though that's part of it. No, the scent isn't just ceremonial, it's directional. It decides who the puppet will be. Lavender for softness, cedar for strength, patchouli for mischief, rose for heartbreak, jasmine for, well, everything. It's Thai puppet theatre's equivalent of duct tape. You see, in this world, a puppet doesn't come preloaded with a fixed character. It's not born a villain or a hero. That gets decided in the moments before. The curtain rises when the incense touches its skin. The puppeteers believe that scent leaves a residue on the wood, that it seeps into the grain, that it awakens memories carved into the puppet over time, a subtle way to guide its behavior without saying a word. And here's the wild part. Even the audience can tell. There are stories, real ones, told by old puppeteers sitting cross-legged beside smoky oil lamps, of seasoned viewers being able to predict a puppet's role just by the smell when it took the stage. Imagine that. The puppet glides out, arms poised, and the crowd leans in. Lemongrass. She's definitely up to something. And it wasn't just about the character's emotion. The scent could affect the entire performance, tempo, gestures, musical mood. Think of it like aromatherapy meets narrative direction. Here's a bizarre historical nugget for you. In one mid-19th century village troupe, the lead puppeteer insisted on using fermented durian oil for scenes of betrayal. Yes, durian. The world's most notorious fruit smell grenade. Supposedly, he claimed that the intensity of the odor made the betrayal more believable. And also kept the front row at a respectful distance. Win-win. But on the flip side, puppets used in romantic or sacred stories were always perfumed with soft oils, lotus, orchid, vanilla. These scents weren't just pleasant, they were considered conductors of virtue. And this idea wasn't limited to the puppets. The puppeteers themselves were expected to match their chosen puppet's scent. They wore the same fragrance on their wrists and necks, believing the alignment between human and puppet would lead to smoother movement, better emotion, even fewer tangled strings, a sort of perfume-based possession. Back at your show, the scent changes. You catch a whiff of something sharper now, pine resin maybe. The puppet on stage shifts posture, standing taller, hands clenched. A warrior? A stormbringer? The narrator's voice tightens through his nose flute. The music darkens. And just like that, the scene changes, not with a line of dialogue, but with a cloud of smoke. Isn't that something? In most theaters, the actors change roles with costumes. Here, they do it with scent. Now imagine how much more intense your favorite movie would be if you could smell every twist. Oh no, it smells like betrayal. Brad's definitely getting dumped. And while most modern performances today skip the incense altogether, the old troupes still swear by it. They believe a puppet without scent is like a monk without a mantra, present but hollow. One old master once said, "If the puppet smells like nothing, it becomes nothing." That line? It stuck with you. The puppet currently dancing across the stage now seems dangerous. Her movements are sharp, her gaze somehow sharper. You don't know her story, not yet, but her perfume tells you enough. She's about to cause problems. And you're quietly loving every moment of it. Because here the story isn't just told, it's breathed. The warrior puppet lowers her head, takes 3 precise steps forward and then stills, just long enough for you to forget she's made of wood. The incense swirls around her like memory smoke. She smells like conflict, old armor, and maybe a little regret. But as the music dims and the lights soften, a hush moves through the audience. Not out of reverence, this silence is heavier, almost funereal. Because now, we come to a rule that might just be the most haunting of them all. A puppet must be buried after 49 performances. Yeah, buried, like a person. You squint toward the stage, suddenly wondering just how many times these puppets have danced. Have they reached their limit? Are you witnessing their final act? You wouldn't be the first. In the old days, it was a strict belief that each puppet had a limited lifespan, 49 full performances, no more, no less. This wasn't arbitrary. The number 49 holds significance in Thai Buddhist cosmology. It's the time the soul wanders between death and rebirth. So, after a puppet had fulfilled its 49 shows, it wasn't simply retired. It was ritually released. The ceremony wasn't elaborate, but it was deeply meaningful. The puppet would be bathed in scented water, its joints loosened, its strings carefully removed. The oath scroll tucked in its chest would be read aloud one final time, then burned. And then, get this, it would be buried upright, facing west. Why west? Because in Buddhist tradition, west symbolizes the direction of the Pure Land, the spiritual resting place. Even puppets, it seems, deserved a path home. Of course, not everyone followed this to the letter. Some troupes, reluctant to part with their most beloved puppets, tried bending the rule. They performed half-shows, arguing it only counted if the puppet had a speaking part. Others renamed the puppet to trick the spirits. But ask any veteran puppeteer, and they'll tell you, cheating the count never ends well. There's a famous cautionary tale from a riverside town near Sukhothai. Our troupe performed their favorite puppet, the heroic prince known as Ramchai, for 54 shows. On the 55th, the puppet's strings snapped. Everyone. Mid-performance. No one was touching it. Even worse, the puppeteer's hand began to swell. Doctors said it was a spider bite. Locals whispered otherwise. That puppet was buried the next morning, quietly, at dawn. In the rain. Ever since, most serious troops keep careful count. You glance again at the puppet, now frozen mid-battle. She seems tired. Not like a broken toy, but like a warrior who's told the same story a few too many times. You wonder, is this number 49 for her? If so, you might be witnessing a kind of death, beautiful, silent, and carved from teak. There's something poetic about it, isn't there? An art that knows when to bow out, when to fade, when to return to the soil. Modern life rarely respects endings like that. We binge, we drag things on, we reboot until meaning gets blurry. But in this world, this quiet corner of puppets and vows and starlit judgment, endings matter. And not just for the puppet. For the puppeteers too, this ritual offers closure. It marks time. It creates space for grief, yes, but also for renewal. A buried puppet means a new one must be born. Carved, named, oathed, scented, and eventually watched by you years from now under a different sky. Odd fact time. There's one hill in northern Thailand where over 200 puppets have been buried. Locals call it the Field of Forgotten Faces. No signs, no flowers, just soft ground and stories resting beneath. Some say if you walk there at night you can hear music. Others say if you dig you'll find them, still standing, still silent, still waiting. But most just leave it alone. Back at the performance, the puppet finally moves. A slow, lingering. Her arm lifts one last time, more wave than attack. The narrator hums a low farewell through his nose flute. The crowd leans forward. No one claps, they don't need to. Some part of you already knows she won't return. And somewhere behind the curtain, the puppeteers breathe in quiet relief. They've told her story. She's done her 49. Now, it's time to let her rest. And you? You're already thinking about the next puppet. Because the show, like the soul, always continues. The warrior disappears behind the curtain. No grand fanfare, no final bow. Just a soft rustle of fabric, the lingering trace of sandalwood, in the air and then absence. But you're not given time to mourn because before you can blink a new puppet steps into the light, smaller, lighter, a jester perhaps, or a child. The music shifts to a bouncing rhythm. Someone hums in the shadows, and then you hear it. The same melody you've heard before. Not similar, not inspired by. The exact same opening tune. And that's no accident. Because here's another unspoken rule of ancient Thai puppet theatre. The opening song must never change. Not just across nights, across generations. Every performance, no matter the story, the audience, the mood, begins with the same melody. A tune older than memory, a soft rhythmic chant meant to wake the puppets and signal to the spirits that the tale is about to unfold. It's not written down anywhere, not in a formal way. It lives through memory, passed from teacher to student, whispered rather than recorded, a living melody. Think about that. A song carried across time without ever being altered. In a world that remixes everything from coffee orders to fairy tales, that's a rare kind of reverence. The puppeteers believe this melody does more than start the show. It calms the puppets, anchors them, brings them into harmony with the unseen energies of the audience, like a tuning fork for the soul. And yes, there's a bit of superstition, too. It's said that if the opening tune is altered, or worse, forgotten, the entire show will fall apart. Puppets will drop mid-scene, strings will tangle, the narrator will lose his place. Even the audience may start to feel disoriented, like waking up on the wrong side of a dream. That actually happened once. There's a record from 1886. A small troupe in Phitsanulok decided to open their show with a new song, a modern piece, borrowed from a temple dance. Halfway through the scene, the main puppet's rod snapped, slicing through a curtain. A lantern caught fire. The narrator fainted. Coincidence? Maybe. But they never tried it again. You're watching the performance now, and you notice something strange. Even though the puppets have changed, and the scene is lighter, comedic almost, the tone of the melody hasn't. It's soothing, hypnotic, not cheerful, not sad, just steady. And that's the secret, isn't it? The opening song doesn't tell you how to feel. It tells you to listen, to slow down, to let the world outside dissolve for a while. That's what makes this theater so different. It doesn't rush you. It invites you. Gently, persistently, like a story that taps you on the shoulder until you turn and say, "Okay, I'm here." Now, here's your curious fact for tonight. In certain coastal regions, this melody was believed to mimic the rhythm of ocean tides. And when played near the shore, puppeteers claimed the waves would sink ever so slightly to the beat. Did anyone measure that scientifically? Of course not. But in this world, belief is the measure. Even the puppets respond to it. Watch closely. As the melody plays, they begin to twitch softly. A tilt of the head, a bend of the knee. It's not choreography. It's a kind of awakening, like limbs remembering motion after sleep. Hand the audience, they settle. Even the children stop fidgeting. The smell of jasmine deepens in the air. Someone nearby exhales like they've been holding their breath all day. You might be one of them, because the opening song has done its job, not just in starting the show, but in calling you into this world of stillness, scent, and sacred silence. And now the jester puppet grins, a slow, exaggerated smirk. The music fades, the curtain flutters, and the tale, whatever it is, can finally begin. The jester lifts a hand, wrist flicking in tight little circles like he's winding up a joke that only he knows the punchline to. You lean in. The audience chuckles, a light, careful ripple of laughter, polite and hushed, just how the gods prefer it. And then comes the first line of narration, but wait, it doesn't come from the narrator's mouth. It comes from his nose. Yes, you heard right. Here in the strange, whispering world of ancient Thai puppet theater, there's another peculiar rule that defies all logic but absolutely demands respect. Narrators must sing through their noses, not their mouths. You weren't ready for this one, were you? But it's real, and it's not a joke. The technique is called pleng nai jek, and it's less like singing and more like intoning, projecting soft nasal melodies that sound like a flute trapped inside a human being. It's gentle, it's haunting, and once you hear it, you don't forget it. But why the nose? Well, several reasons, depending on which old master you ask. Some say the mouth is too expressive, too tied to ego. To sing through the mouth is to show off. It's indulgent. It competes with the puppets for attention, but nasal singing, that's humble, that's background, that's spiritual. Others say the nose acts as a filter, a passageway that softens, the voice making it less sharp, more rounded, more Puppety. You're not supposed to hear the narrator as a person. You're supposed to hear them as a spirit moving through the story, like wind through rice stalks. And you know what? It works. The voice floats, it doesn't interrupt, it lingers just long enough to guide the scene, then dissolves, leaving space for the puppets to act without being upstaged. There's even a belief that mouth singing is dangerous during performances, that if the narrator uses their mouth, they might pull the soul out of the puppet. And that's a hard no. In fact, one famous troupe in the 1700s had a narrator who developed a cough mid-performance and had to sing through his mouth just to finish the show. 3 puppets collapsed before the final scene. The curtain caught fire. 2 monks fainted. After that, the troupe added a backup nose singer, just in case. Want another fun fact? There's a ritual instrument used to test a narrator's nasal pitch before the show. It looks like a cross between a kazoo and a fish whistle. If the note's too sharp, no go. If the resonance is off, they don't perform. The puppet's fate depends on nasal acoustics, apparently. You're watching now, and the jester puppet has begun a monologue, something about stealing a mango from a sleeping elephant. Classic. But the narration, it floats above the puppet like steam. You can't quite follow the language, but the emotion carries anyway. It's funny but soft. A giggle in a library, a joke whispered through a dream. And the best part? The narrator never appears. He's seated somewhere deep in the shadows, hunched low, face tilted slightly upward so the airflow resonates just right. You imagine him like a monk meditating into a microphone made of silk. You glance around the audience. No one is speaking, no phones, no rustling. Everyone's just tuned in, not hypnotized, not spellbound, something gentler, held. This isn't theater, it's a ceremony disguised as a joke, a sacred thing pretending to be silly so your heart opens without noticing. And the narrator's voice, nasal and unhurried, strings it all together like a ribbon in the dark. When you finally blink, the scene has shifted again. The jester is gone. The music pauses. A new puppet steps forward, taller, arms heavier, painted in red and gold. You sense the mood change. The incense sharpens, the silence deepens, and in that silence another voice begins to hum. Through the nose, of course, because here, everything passes through soft filters, even history. The new puppet enters with slow, deliberate steps. He doesn't bounce like the jester. He doesn't glide like the warrior. This one presses into the space, as if he's carrying something unseen. His face is solemn. His hands tremble just slightly, and as you observe him, something strange begins to creep into your awareness. You notice the direction he's facing. It's not forward, it's not toward the crowd, it's north. And that is a problem, because in traditional Thai puppet theater, there's a rule older than any script or character design. Never perform with the stage facing north, ever. It might seem arbitrary, but in this theater nothing is. According to centuries-old belief, the north is a sacred yet dangerous direction, the dwelling place of powerful spirits, the resting orientation of the dead, and the traditional gateway through which misfortune arrives. Performing a puppet. Play facing north was said to invite the wrath of celestial forces, not the cute Disney kind of spirits, the other kind, the ones who don't care how well your puppets are carved. Some said it brought confusion, others said it summoned disobedience, that puppets would twist their own strings, refuse to follow choreography, or worse, perform a different story entirely. It happened once. Or so the tale goes. In 1769, a small troupe near Chiang Rai was asked to perform in a royal garden. Beautiful location, stunning view. The only issue? The stage was built facing due north. The puppeteers begged to shift it, the nobleman refused. So they performed. The scene was supposed to be a traditional folk tale about a faithful elephant, but somehow the puppets turned it into a war drama, a very graphic war drama. Heads rolled. The elephant betrayed its master. The heroine married the villain. The narrator fainted from panic. The nobleman, delighted. The troupe, disbanded. The puppets, buried the next day under banana leaves. So yes, direction matters. Even today, older puppet masters still carry compasses, not for hiking, but for Stage alignment. If the compass reads north, the curtain stays closed. Some rural temples even built semi-permanent puppet stages locked into a southeast orientation, said to please both the spirits of the land and the audience's eyesight. And here's the kicker. The puppets themselves are believed to feel direction. Yes, they can tell. A puppet facing north might bow slower, might refuse to lift its head, might seem heavy. One master described it as the wood remembering too much. Back in tonight's performance, the red and gold puppet begins to speak, or rather the narrator hums for him. Through the nose, of course. The puppet gestures upward, then downward. His hands shake, his head droops. He seems burdened. You glance toward the curtain edge. The lanterns flicker toward the right. East wind. That means the puppet is indeed facing north. Was this intentional? A mistake? Or is the troupe testing fate? You feel your breath catch slightly, irrational as it is. It's just direction, right? But here everything means something, and suddenly the puppet stops. Stillness. It's not part of the script, you can tell. The narrator stumbles for a beat. The music hangs suspended like a held cough. Then, with almost painful care, the puppet slowly turns. Not all at once, just his head, southward, toward the audience. And you swear, the weight lifts from the air. He continues. The scene picks up, the music returns, and in the quiet space behind your ribs, you find yourself exhaling too. Just a puppet, you think, just an angle. But in this theater, direction isn't just geography. It's permission to tell the story, to move the spirit, to continue the dance. Because when the stage faces the wrong way, the story can't find its way forward. But tonight it turns, it finds you, and onward it goes. The red and gold puppet exits with a slow, deliberate bow, his performance done, his gaze no longer burdened by the north. You exhale with him. But before you have time to settle into that peace, another puppet stumbles onto the stage, literally. Stumbles, arms flailing, legs tangled. It lurches forward, flops sideways, and then drops face first with a dramatic wooden thud. Gasps ripple through the audience. A mistake? No. Because then it moves again. Jerky, exaggerated, and utterly ridiculous. The narrator lets out a nasal groan of mock despair. The musicians add an awkward drumbeat. The puppet rises, clearly offended by gravity. Everyone chuckles. And that's when it hits you. This puppet isn't just clumsy. It's angry. But not at anyone else, at itself. You're witnessing something rare, something dangerous, a puppet-breaking character. And that leads us into one of the strangest rules in all of ancient Thai puppet theatre. If a puppet is mishandled or embarrassed, it may refuse to perform. Sounds absurd, right? But in this world, puppets aren't props. They're vessels, containers. Of spirit, memory, and tension. You don't just move them, you partner with them, you earn their trust, and if you don't, they let you know. In traditional troupes, this was a known phenomenon. A puppeteer could be in perfect form, but if they treated the puppet roughly, ignored its story, or used it for a role it wasn't meant to play, the puppet would go wrong. Strings would tangle, arms would freeze, the head would droop at odd moments, like the puppet was sulking. And the troops didn't blame the puppeteer. They blamed the puppet. They believed the puppet had been insulted, disrespected, even shamed. And like any performer, it reacted. You're watching this one now, the chaotic marionette on stage, and something is clearly off. His arms flap when they're supposed to point. His legs jitter even when the music slows. The puppeteers are doing their best. You can feel their energy, trying to reel him in, trying to steady his rhythm. But he resists. And it's almost funny. There's an old tale that puppets, especially older ones, develop something like a temper, a personality forged from decades of movement, oil, and incense. One puppet, known only as Uncle Sip, became famous for slapping co-stars mid-scene. Not scripted, not approved, just a sudden wooden whack. Crowds loved it. Puppeteers feared it. Eventually, Uncle Sip was retired, which in puppet terms may or may not involve being buried under a mango tree. But here's what makes it beautiful. The puppeteers don't try to dominate the puppet. They adjust, they listen, they feel the tension in the strings, the resistance in the rods. If a puppet is unhappy, they change the story. They rewrite the scene mid-performance. The music adapts, the narration pivots. Because this isn't about control, it's about respect. Back at your show, something shifts. The rogue puppet finally pauses mid-jiggle. One puppeteer slowly brings its hand to its wooden forehead, as if wiping sweat. The audience chuckles. The puppet sighs, then shrugs. Peace. It rejoins the rhythm. Scene continues, and you realize that wasn't failure. That was negotiation. Her gentle compromise between wood and will. Here's your curious fact of the night. Some troupes have a healing kit backstage, not for the humans, but for the puppets. It includes scented oils, soft cloth, and a small mirror. After a rough performance, puppeteers will quietly apologize to the puppet, wipe its face, untangle its strings, and gently whisper a blessing. Whether it's superstition or sincerity, it works. The puppet calms. The next night, no flailing, just flow. You smile now as the puppet on stage takes its final bow, still a little wobbly but with dignity, because even a puppet needs grace. And maybe so do you. The curtain flutters once, twice, then stills. The mischievous puppet has left and the scent of lemongrass fades with it. You're still smiling, but something in the air shifts. Not the breeze, not the music, something older. Then, without warning, the puppets freeze. Completely. No gesture, no narrator, no music. Just silence. The audience doesn't react. No. Whispers. No movement. They're waiting for something. And then you hear it, a bell chime in the distance, followed by the softest sound, the pat, pat, pat of paws on packed dirt. A cat. You blink. Yes. A real cat has wandered onto the edge of the stage, tail high, moving with all the authority of a royal inspector. And suddenly it all makes sense. Because in ancient Thai puppet theatre, there's an unwritten but widely honored rule. A puppet show must not begin, truly begin, until a cat has walked past the stage. You think I'm kidding. I'm not. In many rural villages, cats were seen as protectors of the spirit world, guardians of transitions, creatures that slipped easily between planes, the living, the dead, the imagined. So when a cat strolled past a stage before a performance, it was seen as a sign of approval. The spirit world had been alerted. The boundaries were open. The tale could safely unfold. If no cat appeared, the troupe waited, sometimes for hours. In rare cases, they sent a child to fetch a local temple cat and lure it across with dried fish or jingling bells. In at least one documented case, heavily rumored, a puppeteer pretended to be a cat, crawling across the stage on all fours just to appease the ritual. Did it work? Apparently. But let's get one thing straight. The cat must come on. Its own. No forced entries, no staged moments. It must choose the moment, and when it does, everyone waits. Even the narrator, even the puppets. Because if a puppet moves before the cat gives its silent blessing, well, things might go weird. We're talking tangled strings, fractured scenes. In one story, the entire third act of a royal drama was performed in reverse. The hero died before being born. The villain was forgiven before he sinned. A complete narrative collapse. All because the cat hadn't come. So you sit, watching this little four-legged sentinel do its rounds, sniffing, a lantern brushing past a curtain, knocking over a flower pot, rude, and the whole theatre just accepts it. This is normal. And in a strange way, it's comforting, because here even chaos has its customs. And cats, they're not chaos. They're keepers. Odd fact of the night, some puppet troupes had official cat members, complete with names, rituals, and even tiny collars made of gold thread. One cat, named Mi Noi, was so famous she once received a blessing from a visiting monk and was later painted on the troupe's travel wagon. Back on stage, the cat finishes its inspection. It hops, off without ceremony, and just like that, the puppets move. The narrator exhales his first nasal note. The story begins. You don't realize how much tension was building until it melts away. Because in this world, You're not just watching a performance. You're participating in a ritual of patience, one soft paw print at a time. And you wouldn't dare start without the cat's approval. The performance resumes, as if the cat's little parade never happened, but you feel the difference. The puppets move more smoothly now, like the strings are lighter, the stage warmer. Even the narrator's nasal hum carries a hint of relief. The scene transitions. A royal garden. Two puppets meet beneath a silk tree. One bows low. The other responds with a delicate flutter of her sleeve. You sense something sacred in this moment, something scripted, rehearsed, but also fragile. And that's when the music dips. The narrator tightens his tone and you realize, this is a love scene, and yet, wait for it, no one kisses. Because in ancient Thai puppet theatre, there's a rule so strict, so oddly poetic, that it's never broken. Puppets are never allowed to kiss on stage. Not ever. Not even a peck. It doesn't matter how romantic the story is, whether it's an epic reunion, a royal wedding, or two mischievous ghosts in a moonlit rice field. The moment love reaches its height, the puppets stop just short. Their hands touch, their heads lean in. Sometimes their foreheads press together, an ancient Thai gesture of intimacy, far deeper than a kiss. But their lips never meet. Why? The official reason: modesty, decorum. These performances were traditionally held in temples, villages, royal courts, public spaces where even the suggestion of onstage kissing could be considered vulgar. But there's a deeper layer. According to belief, kissing breathes life. A kiss transfers spirit, awakens flesh. And in the world of puppets, where life is already a borrowed thing, suspended on strings, borrowed from incense and chant, allowing them to kiss would be crossing a dangerous line. It would be like declaring them fully human. And that's not allowed, because once a puppet becomes fully human, well, then it must live. And everything that lives, Gil, must also die. The rule is a kind of boundary, a protective veil. It says, this is close enough, this is still safe, and so the romance must be expressed in other ways. A shared flower, a ribbon tied between wrists. A pause so perfectly timed it aches more than any embrace. There's even an old saying among puppeteers, let the strings tremble, not the lips. You're watching now, and the two puppets on stage are reaching that moment. Her hand lifts. His fingers almost touch. The music slows. A drum beat mimics a heartbeat. You expect the kiss. You want the kiss. But it doesn't come. Instead, they bow to each other. Once. Twice. And then slowly turn away, facing opposite directions. It's beautiful, and somehow more emotional than if they had kissed. Odd fact of the night. In some historic troupes, any puppeteer who accidentally let the puppet's lips touch was required to perform a cleansing ritual, consisting of 9 prostrations, 7 incense offerings, and in one case a 3-day vow of silence. Talk about stage fright. And yet, despite the restriction, or maybe because of it, these scenes still carry emotional weight. Because in a world ruled by rules, what you don't do becomes even more powerful. The curtain falls briefly. The puppets disappear. The music lingers a little longer, softer now, like a lullaby trying not to wake anyone. And as you sit in that quiet space, you realize something. The magic of this theater isn't in what's shown. It's in what's withheld. The curtain lifts again, but this time the stage looks different. You can't quite put your finger on it. Nothing's changed, and yet the feeling has shifted, like you've crossed an invisible threshold. The puppets are still. The narrator hasn't made a sound. The musicians sit poised with their instruments, waiting. And that's when you notice something peculiar. The front row is completely empty. No cushions, no guests, just bare earth smoothed flat. Strange, right? Every other row is packed with silent, respectful watchers. Some sit cross-legged, others kneel politely, eyes glued to the stage. But the front? Not a soul. It's not an accident. Because in ancient Thai puppet theatre, there's one more rule most audiences never notice, unless they look closely. The front row must always remain empty. Why? Because it's not for you. It's for them, the ancestors, the spirits, the unseen. This rule, unspoken, unbroken, is one of quiet reverence. The first row, the closest space to the stage, belongs to those who've passed, but still wish to listen. It's their space to sit, to watch, to remember. It's said that if you dare to sit in that row, you might start to feel uncomfortable, like someone is breathing beside you, like a hand brushes your sleeve without a body attached to it. There are countless stories. A merchant's daughter once ignored the rule, insisting she deserved the best view. Midway. Through the second act, she fainted, not from heat, not from fright, just gone. When she woke, she swore she'd heard voices speaking a language no one around her could understand, except the puppets. She never attended another show. In some villages, the empty row is marked with flower petals or sprinkled rice. In others, it's simply left bare. Everyone knows the rule. Children are warned, travelers are guided away, and the puppeteers, they never look toward the front row. Not directly. You're watching now, and your eyes drift toward that empty space. For a moment you wonder, who's sitting there right now? A grandmother who loved this story. A monk who once performed it. A puppeteer buried with strings still wrapped around his fingers. It gives you chills. But not the bad kind, the respectful kind. Because in this world, everyone is invited to the story. Even those who've left the stage of life. Odd fact of the night, some troupes whisper a greeting before each show, not to the audience but to the empty front row. A simple phrase, we begin with you and we end with you. It's not morbid, it's not creepy, it's grateful. And perhaps in a culture where performance is offering and puppets are vessels of truth, this empty space is the most honored seat of all. Back on the stage, a new puppet enters. She pauses at the edge of the curtain, head tilted, not toward the crowd but slightly downward, toward the first row, toward them. Then she bows, slow, deep, long. The musicians begin to play. The story continues. And you? You find yourself sitting just a little straighter, a little quieter, a little more present, because you're not alone, not here, not tonight. The puppet rises from her bow, her movement slower now, graceful but deliberate, like someone stepping carefully through sacred ground. The narrator's voice glides in, nasal and low, and the melody shifts again, this time softer, rounder, like rain tapping against banana leaves. But there's something else. A sound you hadn't noticed before, a trickle, a faint, continuous flow of water behind the music, not overpowering, just enough to whisper into the silence. It's not a coincidence, because here comes another. Of this theatre's oldest and most curious rules, every traditional puppet performance must include the sound of flowing water. Yes, water, real or recorded. Visible or hidden, trickling, dripping, sometimes just imagined, the sound must be there. Why? Because water cleanses, it protects, it grounds the story. And in Thai belief, water is a bridge between worlds, between lives, between reality and illusion. It's the element that purifies space, softens hard truths, and keeps unwanted spirits from slipping in where they're not welcome. For puppet troupes, this isn't symbolic fluff. It's protocol. In the old days, stages were often built beside rivers or canals, and the performance would happen on a bamboo platform just above the waterline. The flow beneath served two purposes, spiritual and acoustic. The ripples echoed under the floor, making the puppet's footsteps sound like whispers over time itself. But even when inland, far from any stream, troupes would bring water with them. Clay pots, bamboo gutters, bowls filled and hidden behind the stage. And if real water wasn't possible, then came the next best thing, a recording of running water played softly beneath the music. Some troupes even trained musicians to simulate it with their instruments, gentle rubbing of gongs, low tremors from drums, even specialized bamboo flutes that mimic the gurgle of a stream. You hear it now, behind the drama unfolding on stage. The puppet speaks through gesture, a raised hand, a lowered chin, a moment of pause so still it feels like breath held by the universe. And beneath it all, that flowing sound. Constant, unobtrusive, reassuring. There's a reason, because in this art form, where puppets carry soul fragments and stories brush up against the spirit world, water acts as a boundary. It defines the space. It calms what should be calmed. It washes away the remnants of fear, confusion, and too long-held grief. Think of it like a moat, except instead of keeping enemies out, it keeps the past and present from getting tangled. Here's a strange and oddly soothing detail. Some troupes place floating candles in their backstage water bowls. The belief? If the flame flickers during a scene, someone in the audience has been emotionally moved. If it extinguishes completely, the story has touched a forgotten sorrow, something the puppet was meant to release. You glance around. No candles. Tonight. But you feel something just the same. The puppet on stage is kneeling now, perhaps praying, perhaps remembering. Her arms move slowly like waves. Her head tilts as if listening to the current beneath her. You swear you hear a second stream now, fainter, further off. Or maybe it's your own breathing, falling into rhythm with the story. Because in this place, every sound has purpose. Even silence is sculpted. And water? It never stops moving. Just like the tale, the water keeps flowing, soft, steady, hypnotic. And then, without fanfare, a new puppet enters the stage. It's a soldier. You can tell by the carved armor, the angular posture, the stern stillness before the first move. His face is solemn, painted with eyes that don't blink but somehow see everything. You watch as he turns toward the curtain, then freezes, and stays that way. Odd. The puppeteers adjust. The narrator hums a note, as if encouraging him forward. But still, the puppet hesitates. It shouldn't, unless you remember the next rule, one that sounds more like folklore than stage direction. But in this theater, nothing is just myth. A puppet must never look directly at its puppeteer. Yes, in the entire tradition of Thai puppet theater, one invisible law governs the relationship. Between the puppet and the person pulling its strings, they must not make eye contact. It's not about ruining the illusion. It's deeper than that. It's about respect, about roles, about the thin line between vessel and spirit. The puppeteer gives motion, the puppet gives meaning, but they must stay separate. If a puppet turns and sees the puppeteer, something in the balance breaks. Old masters say the puppet becomes aware, not in a spooky, haunted doll kind of way, but in a quiet, tragic one. As if it realizes it is being controlled, as if the magic that gave it life suddenly becomes confinement. And so the rule stands: the puppet may face the audience, it may bow to the ancestors, it may even gesture toward the narrator's voice, in the shadows. But it must never turn around and see who holds the rods, because the moment it does, it might stop being a character and become an object again. Or worse, start moving on its own. You think I'm joking? There's a famous story from the 1800s about a puppet named Luang, carved in the image of a legendary monk. During a performance, one of the puppeteers miscalculated a turn. The puppet spun too far, and for a split second, it locked eyes with its operator. It froze, wouldn't move again, no matter how they pulled, whispered, or pleaded. The next day they found it with its strings tangled, its wooden hands twisted inward, as if trying to cover its own face. Luang was buried within the week. You look back to the stage. Tonight's soldier puppet remains still, facing the edge of the curtain. Then, with a flick of a wrist and a shared breath from the puppeteers, he pivots back, toward the audience. Toward you, balance restored. You didn't even notice you were holding your breath until he moved again. The narrator resumes. The scene picks up. The soldier begins a speech, not with words, but with subtle gestures, a hand on his heart, then on the earth, then toward the sky. It's a vow, maybe of duty, maybe of sorrow. You imagine what it must feel like to be a puppet, filled with stories, moved by unseen hands, always dancing for others, and yet never allowed to see who pulls the strings. Odd fact of the night. Some puppeteers wear special talismans under their clothing during performances, small cloth charms stitched with prayers, not for themselves but to protect the puppet from seeing too much, from knowing too deeply, from waking up. Because in this world, It's not enough to control the puppet. You have to protect its innocence too. Back on stage, the soldier kneels. Not in surrender, in peace. The narrator's voice fades to a whisper. The music softens to a heartbeat. And somewhere behind the curtain, unseen, the puppeteer smiles, not at being in control, but at being unseen. Because that's how the story survives. The soldier's bowed head remains still for a moment longer, as if paying final respects. Not to the audience, not to the battlefield behind him, but perhaps to the story itself. Then, gently, the puppet is withdrawn. No dramatic exit. Just quiet retreat, no eye contact. The music hushes. A flute takes over. The lights dim slightly. And from behind the curtain comes a new figure. Elegant, graceful, face painted in ivory and gold. But you notice something odd. No name is spoken. The narrator never introduces her. The musicians don't play her theme. The puppet enters like a secret. And that's when you realize you are not supposed to know her real name. Because here comes another quiet but powerful rule in ancient Thai puppet theater. Every puppet has a true name, but it must never be spoken aloud. Not during performance, not during rehearsal, not even backstage. Only the puppet's nickname may be used. In public, the real name? That's whispered once, during the awakening ceremony when the puppet is first completed, scented, and blessed. It's said only the head puppeteer, the narrator, and the puppet itself hear that name, and then it's locked away. Why? Because names hold power. To speak a puppet's true name is to awaken its spirit, to rattle it, to call it out of character, to risk it remembering something it shouldn't. Because remember, these aren't just pieces of carved wood. They've been bathed in incense. They've carried oaths. They've danced before monks and kings and ancestral rows of invisible guests. They're more than props. They're vessels. And vessels, if disturbed, can spill. There's a chilling, old legend from central Thailand about a puppet called Theaterr. Her real name, they say, was spoken aloud by accident during a storm-delayed rehearsal. The next day, Theaterr moved on her own. Just once. She lifted her arm in the absence of music. The narrator fainted. The show was cancelled. That puppet was burned, not buried, and her ashes scattered across 4 temples. Did it really happen? Hard to say, but every troupe knows the tale. And every puppeteer you meet will tell you with a straight face, we don't say their names, ever. Instead, they use nicknames, playful, safe, respectful. Little Jasmine, Uncle Moon, Red Monkey, Lady Willow. These names carry just enough identity for performance, but not enough to disturb what sleeps within. You're watching now, and the elegant puppet on stage moves with unmatched grace. Her gestures tell a tale of longing, of a letter never received, of a boat that sailed before the tide turned. You'll never know her true name, but you feel it somehow. Not in your mind, but in your chest, in the way her head tilts, the way her hands search the air for something that never quite arrives. She's a memory you've never had. A secret you weren't meant to keep. And you realize this is the point. In this world of whispers and wooden breath, not knowing is part of the spell. Odd fact of the night? There was once a puppeteer so devoted to protecting his puppet's identity, he only referred to her by tapping twice on his chest. Once before a show, once after. Never aloud. The troupe called her the one who needs no name. And her performances? Unforgettable. Back in your seat, you lean forward as Lady Willow, no, not her real name, raises one hand in farewell. Not to the crowd, to someone only she can see. And just like that, she's gone. No bow, no curtain, only silence. And the feeling that you've just brushed against something sacred. The silence after her exit feels different, not empty, reverent. The stage holds still, as if exhaling. The narrator doesn't speak. The musicians don't stir. Even the water sound pauses, like it's giving space for whatever just passed through. Then a soft drum beat returns, gentle, tentative, like footsteps, and another puppet steps forward. But there's something curious about him. Something plain, his face is unpainted. His robes are simple. His gestures are small, quiet, almost shy. You wonder, who is this? No title, no drama, no name you recognize. But the puppeteers are treating him with immense care. And that's when the next forgotten rule of ancient Thai puppet theater begins to unfold. The puppeteer must never become more famous than the puppet. Strange, isn't it? In most kinds of theater, the performer gets the spotlight. The actor takes the bow. The audience applauds the skill behind the illusion. But here, the highest praise a puppeteer can receive is no recognition at all. Because the point isn't to be admired, it's to disappear. The art demands ego be erased. In fact, traditional puppet troupes didn't even list performer names on scrolls or flyers. Only the names of the characters, or sometimes not even that. Just a symbol, a sacred thread, a lotus, a swirl of wind. This wasn't humility for show, it was protection. There's an old belief, if the puppeteer seeks fame, the puppet will go quiet, refuse to move. The story will fall apart. Because the puppet is the star, the story is the teacher, the human, just the conduit. One historical account tells of a puppeteer in Bangkok who became too popular, praised in the royal court, offered his own platform, even portrait commissions. Soon after, his puppets began to lose rhythm. Their performances felt mechanical, empty. Eventually, he stepped down, publicly apologized, and returned to silence. Only then did the puppets return to form. You watch now as the plain puppet tells a story, not of battles or love or mischief, but of a farmer planting seeds before the rain. It's quiet, beautiful, real, and the narrator hums low, as if afraid to speak too loudly. The puppet doesn't need grand gestures, just a tilt of the head, a finger pressed to the earth, and somehow your chest tightens. Because this puppet isn't playing a role, he is the story. The puppeteer behind him, unseen, unnamed, moves with such precision you'd swear the puppet was breathing. Odd fact of the night? Some puppet masters used to wear black veils over their faces, not just to hide in shadow, but to remind themselves, this isn't about you. One even tattooed the phrase "vanish" for the tail on his wrist, because to them true skill was being invisible. And yet, the irony? Their disappearance made the magic more real. Back on stage, the farmer puppet finishes his tale with a small bow, not to the audience, but to the earth beneath him. Then he turns and walks away. No fanfare, no farewell, just silence. The narrator lets out a final breath. The music stops, and for a long moment, the entire audience remains still. No clapping, no chatter, just presence. And you understand. You've just witnessed a performance so honest, so delicate, that not even the puppeteer dared take credit. Because some stories are too sacred for applause, they're meant only to be received. The stillness holds for a moment longer, like everyone is afraid to break it. Even the shadows seem deeper now. The stage looks just a little more worn, the lanterns more solemn. Something is ending, and you can feel it. But not just yet. Because one final puppet emerges, not graceful, not noble, not mischievous, just quiet. A simple figure in faded robes moving slowly, carefully, like someone who knows they shouldn't be seen, but must be. The narrator doesn't speak. The musicians play no notes. This puppet walks in silence. And with that, we reach the final, perhaps most mysterious rule of ancient Thai puppet theater. You must never declare a final performance. Ever. Not out loud. Not in writing. Not even in your heart. To say this is our last show is to call misfortune upon the troupe. It is believed to offend the spirits who dwell within the puppets, the stories, the space between breaths. Instead, troupes end, their journey in silence. No announcements, no fanfare, just a quiet fade. Some disappear between one performance and the next. Others simply stop showing up, their stages packed away, their puppets buried, their names forgotten except in whispers. It's not superstition, it's respect. Because these stories don't belong to any one person. They don't die when a troupe disbands. They just sleep. And to declare a final show would be like telling a sacred river it must stop flowing. You don't end a tradition like this. You step out of the way so it can keep moving without you. One of the most beloved puppet troupes of the 20th century vanished like this. They were known as the wind between curtains, never said goodbye. One night they performed a final scene, simple, wordless. A puppet sat beside a candle and listened to birdsong. The curtain fell. The troupe never performed again. When asked, one member simply said, "The story has moved elsewhere." And maybe that's the truth of this rule. It's not about fear, it's about humility. You don't close the book, you hand it forward. Tonight this final puppet kneels. He doesn't speak, he doesn't act. He simply turns his head toward the shadows behind the curtain, toward the puppeteers, and even though the rule forbids direct eye contact, he lingers, just long enough to say something silent. And then he bows, not just to the audience, but to the stage, to the space, to the puppeteers, to the unseen spirits, and maybe, most of all, to you. The narrator breathes a single soft note. The puppet rises. He walks off stage. The lanterns flicker low, and the curtain closes, slowly, steadily, like the breath of someone finally at rest. No one says it's the end, because it isn't. It never is. The curtain settles. No applause. No announcement. Just the soft sound of the water flowing again, like a stream quietly resuming its course after someone stepped through it. You sit in the hush that follows, not quite ready to move, not quite ready to let go. The stage is empty now, but it doesn't feel abandoned. It feels full of breath that isn't yours, of stories still lingering in the dust, of characters who bowed but never really left. They're all here, just out of sight, just behind the veil. And even though the performance is over, you realize something strange. You've never seen the puppeteers. Not once. No faces, no bows, no shadows slipping out from behind the curtain to claim credit. It's like they were never there. And that, dear listener, is entirely by design. Because here, at the end of this journey through the forgotten rules of ancient Thai puppet theater, one final truth remains. The storyteller must eventually disappear. Not because they're ashamed, not because they're hiding, but because that's how the story lives on. A puppeteer once said, "We vanish so the story stays." It's not about anonymity, it's about legacy. When the hands let go, when the voice fades into nose-breath silence, when even the names are left behind like sandals at a temple gate, what's left? The motion, the memory, the meaning. And if you've made it this far, if you've sat with the puppets and smelled their incense and held your breath for invisible cats and listened to a man hum centuries into your ear through his nose, then you've felt it too. The magic, not flashy, not loud, just true. Odd fact for your final night. In some regions, after the last show of a season, the puppeteers would hang each puppet upside down for one full night so their spirits could return to the ceiling. A poetic way of saying they were letting go, letting the characters rest, letting the story settle. Tonight, maybe the ceiling above you is full of such resting spirits, not haunting, just home. So as the music fades and the stage lights finally dim to black, you feel it. A kind of peace, a quiet you've rarely known, and the comforting sense that nothing sacred ever truly disappears. It just waits, in the wings, in the shadows, in the quiet breath between stories. And when the time is right, when the lanterns are lit and the cat returns and the stars stay respectfully behind the clouds, it will begin again. Now, close your eyes. Let the puppets rest. Let the incense rise. Let the water flow. And now there is only the sound of stillness, no curtain, no puppet, no breath except your own, slow and quiet, drifting somewhere between thought and dream. The tale is over, not with a bang, but with a hush, like a candle dimming itself just enough to let you sleep. The strings have loosened, the scent of old sandalwood and jasmine fades, retreating into the corners of memory where gentle things rest. Let yourself follow it. You've walked through a theater of shadows, where rules whispered louder than applause, where puppets danced with ghosts and storytellers vanished so that the story could stay. You've seen offerings instead of endings, rituals instead of curtain calls. And in this world, silence is not absence, it's invitation. Let your body grow heavier now, like a puppet whose performance is complete. Your thoughts may still flicker, but they too will quiet soon. Just like the water behind the stage, flowing softly, flowing always. Let the night hold you the way the puppeteers held their craft. With tenderness, with trust, and with care too deep for words. There's no more to do now, no more to remember, only to rest. So close your eyes. Let the weight of the day dissolve. Let the lanterns fade, one by one, behind your eyelids. Let the voice that carried you here become nothing more than a warm echo, curling in the dark like smoke that means no harm. You are safe, you are still. You are part of the story now. And the story never ends. Sleep, dear one. Sleep.